All right, this section is going to be working on adding and subtracting rational expressions. So one of the things to remember when adding fractions or subtracting fractions, you must have a common denominator. So in this situation, just with a couple of fractions here, if you are adding 1/5 and 3/5 together, your answer is going to be 2/5, and what we are doing is simply adding the numerators together. All right, so when you have this situation and we want to add the fractions together, once again, we must have a common denominator. And so to do that, I want to approach this a little bit differently, and that is through factoring the denominators. And so if you take the 6 and you break it up, this goes down to 2 times 3. And then the 4 is 2 times 2. And so what we want to do is look at our denominators and think, what does this denominator have that this denominator does not have? Well, this denominator has 2 2's. This one only has 1 2, which means we need to multiply this fraction by another 2. But if we only multiply the denominator by 2, that changes the value of our original fraction. The only way we do not change the value of the original fraction is by multiplying by 1. And so therefore, if we are multiplying the denominator by 2, we must also multiply the numerator by 2. All right, so the next thing is we work this the other way around. And we say, what does this denominator have that this one does not? And this has a 3 in it. This one does not, which means we need to multiply this fraction by 3 over 3. All right, so when we do that, we're going to end up here with 10 over 12 plus 9 over 12, which now gives us 19 over 12. All right, so now we're going to apply that same concept to working with variables. So if we think about this second fraction as 5 over x times x, just to think about this in terms of factoring. And we think, okay, what does this denominator have that this one does not? Well, this has an extra x in it, which means we need another x here. So therefore, you're going to multiply by x over x. Now, this denominator does not have anything that this one doesn't already have. It only has 1x. This already has that. Therefore, this fraction did not have to get multiplied by anything. All right, so now after we do the multiplication, we have 3x over x squared minus 5 over x squared, which gives us our fraction 3x minus 5 over x squared. All right, so the next one is a little bit more involved, simply because we have more variables here. So again, thinking about, does this denominator have anything that this denominator doesn't already have? Well, we have an x and we have a y, and this denominator already has an x and a y. So this fraction does not need to get multiplied by anything. So then we look at it the other way around. Does this denominator have something that this one does not? Well, we need a 2 over here, and we need a couple more y's on this denominator. So therefore, we are going to be multiplying by 2y squared. And that will give us 2x plus 1 over 2x y cubed plus, and then we need to distribute here because of the addition right there. And so that's going to give you 2y cubed plus 2y squared over 2xy cubed. And we can now put this together in one fraction over 2xy cubed. And in the numerator, nothing can be combined in the numerator. They're all different terms. So we're going to have 2y cubed plus 2y squared plus 2x plus 1. All right, looking at this one, once again from the factoring standpoint, we can just prime factor this because there is no addition or subtraction within the denominator, here or here. So we just break it down to its prime factors. All right, so 8 is 3 2's multiplied together, then an x. 10 is 2 times 5 times an x. So now we go through our thinking process. What does this denominator have that this one does not? Well, we got a 2 here. We already got a 2. Got an x. We have an x here. We have a 5 here, but we don't have any 5s over here. So this fraction has to get multiplied by 5 over 5. So now we go the other way around. What does this denominator have that this one is missing? All right, well, here we have 3 2's and here we only have 1 2. So we need to multiply by a couple more 2's. And we have everything else. So therefore we're going to be multiplying by 4 over 4. All right, so putting this together, you're going to have 35 over 40x minus 12 over 40x, which will give us 23 over 40x. All right, so on this one, we have addition here within the denominator, which means we have to think of this as a factor within itself. We do not prime factor it like we did with the other problems. We treat this as a polynomial, and so x plus 2 is a factor and x minus 2 is a factor, which means if you think about this in terms of what we've been doing, what does this denominator have that this one does not? And this one has an x minus 2, which means that's what we are going to be multiplying by, is x minus 2 over x minus 2. Now this denominator had an x plus 2 and this one did not. Therefore that is what we are going to multiply this one by, is x plus 2. Alright, so putting this together, the first fraction is going to be over x plus 2 times x minus 2. And so is the other fraction, x plus 2, x minus 2. We now have that common denominator here. Okay. So up here we're going to have to distribute. Multiplying 3x times both of these terms will give us 3x squared minus 6x. And then distributing here will give us 5x squared plus 10x. We can now add our fractions together, and our denominator is x plus 2, x minus 2. And we combine like terms up here. Now we have a 3x squared minus a 5x squared, which will give us negative 2x squared. And we have a negative 6x minus 10x, which will give us minus 16x. And that is our final answer here. All right, so on this one, what we're going to need to do is factor this binomial right here. This is a difference of two squares. So if we factor this down, now the first fraction, we can't do anything with that. The second fraction goes down to x plus 3 times x minus 3. So we kind of repeat the process we've done before. What does this denominator have that this one does not? And that is an x minus 3. Therefore, that is what we're going to multiply by. All right, so multiplying, that is going to give us x squared minus 3x over x plus 3x minus 3 plus negative 18 over this. And then combining together, we have a denominator of x plus 3, x minus 3, and our numerator is going to be x squared minus 3x, and then minus 18. Now, one of the things that we want to notice about this is that our numerator can be factored further. And the numerator would factor down to x minus 6 times x plus 3. Now, that is beneficial because the x plus 3's will now cancel out in the numerator and denominator, leaving us with an answer of x minus 6 over x minus 3. Okay. All right, this is similar. We need to once again factor our denominator right here. This is a difference of two squares. Now we do not need to factor the numerator. We could, but it's not necessary. It's not going to benefit us at all. So we'll just leave it alone. And factoring the denominator will take us down to x plus 2 times x minus 2. Which means this denominator is missing an x minus 2. So that's what we need to multiply by. All right, so the problem over here does not change. Over here, the denominator is now x plus 2, x minus 2. And up here we need to distribute. We're going to FOIL this problem out. First outer, inner last, which after you combine like terms will be x squared plus 2x minus 8. All right, so now subtracting these two fractions, you're going to have x plus 2 and x minus 2 as a denominator. You have 2x squared minus x squared. That will give us just an x squared. We have a minus a 2x, which will be right here. And then we have negative 16 minus negative 8. That changes to plus 8. So negative 16 plus 8 is minus 8. Now, once again, this numerator will factor down. And this factors down to x minus 4 times x plus 2. And that is beneficial for us, like before, because your x plus 2's will cancel out, leaving us with x minus 4 over x minus 2. All right, this one's going to involve factoring on both the denominators. And so here we will have 3x over x plus 3 times x plus 1. And then on this one, factors down to x plus 2 and x plus 3. All right, so we go through our processes like we have before. What does this denominator have that this one does not? Okay, well, we have an x plus 2 here, but we don't have an x plus 2 over here. So that is what we need to multiply by. We're missing that part. We have an x plus 3 here, and we have that over here as well, so there's nothing else that we're missing. Now, this fraction has an x plus 1 in the denominator, but this one does not, which means this fraction is going to multiply by x plus 1 over x plus 1. All right, so distributing here will give us 3x squared plus 6x. Now our denominator is going to have 3 factors in it. It's going to have the x plus 2, x plus 3, and the x plus 1. Now distributing here will give us 5x plus 5. And again, we've got the 3 factors of x plus 2, x plus 3, and x plus 1. We can now combine them into one fraction. And that one fraction will have that denominator. And adding the numerators, we got a 3x squared here. We have a 6x plus a 5x, so that's going to give us plus 11x. And then we've got a plus 5 up here. Now this numerator is not going to factor down, and so therefore this is our final answer right here. And the last problem that we'll hit here. All right, so we're going to factor this denominator by taking out a GCF of 2x, which leaves us with x minus 3. This is a difference of 2 squares, which goes down to x plus 3 times x minus 3. All right, so now, does this denominator have something that this one does not? And it does. It has an x plus 3. This denominator does not have an x plus 3. Therefore, that's what we need to multiply by. And then we look at it the other way around. This denominator has a 2x. This denominator does not have a 2x. So that's what we need to multiply by over here. Everything else it has. So if we multiply these things together, we have 3x squared plus 9 over 2x, x plus 3, x minus 3. And we'll have a 4x on top here over that same denominator. And then combining these together into one answer, you have 2x, x plus 3, x minus 3 for your denominator. And the numerator is 3x squared. Then you have a minus 4x. And a positive 9 up here. And once again, this numerator does not factor down. Therefore, this is our final answer here.